Hey everyone, how's it going today? And welcome back to another update. So today's update is technically going to be a continuation of yesterday's video and update, although you really can be watching this in any particular order, so I'll definitely put that video at the very end screen if you guys haven't checked it out. Most people have, but it's really maybe as a 10-second recap, is that in yesterday's update, we talked a little bit about how currently right now there is something called the EIDL program, and what this is that it's essentially a program that's meant to give somewhere between a $5,000 to $15,000 grant if you are someone that qualifies for this program, depending on your current situation. Of course, within this, there's technically also 3 different versions of this program. There is something called the just general EIDL, there's something called the targeted EIDL advance, and in today's update, I really want to talk about the 3rd version of this program now, which is essentially called the supplemental targeted advance version of the EIDL. So in today's update, I pretty much just want to run through and talk a little bit about that 3rd program, really covering about what are the qualifications, answering some very common questions that I saw based off of comments in yesterday's update. If you guys have any kind of particular questions, feel free to just comment them down below. As always, feel free to also just answer them for each other. I tried to get to as many, but if I ever overlook your comment, feel free to just comment it once again, as many times as probably is needed to get attention. As long as you are not one of those Bitcoin impersonators, you guys can feel free to just share it, or just basically comment any questions so I can gauge what people are looking for, and we're definitely also going to answer a lot of them in today's update. So with that being said, we're going to get started, but as always, real fast, 10 seconds. As always, consider smashing the like button because it is always greatly appreciated. If you guys enjoy videos like these, consider subscribing, hitting the bell for similar videos. I'll put videos at the end screen so you guys can also follow up on those other programs. And as always, just mention, feel free to comment any questions, thoughts about honestly just really anything. So with that being said, let's get this video started. So the program that we're really going to be talking about today is essentially the 3rd version of the EIDL program, even more specifically called the Supplemental Targeted Advance Program. Once again, is that this is a grant that you don't have to pay back. You can keep all of it. This specific program has 3 qualifications, actually very similar to yesterday's program. Essentially what it is that if you are able to qualify for this, they'll be able to give you up to a $5,000 grant, depending on how much money your business or your job, in this case, as a self-employed contractor, had, and then how much money you lost as a result because of the pandemic. In order to be able to qualify for this, the qualification is that you have to have been before the pandemic previously working, either running a business or working a job, but even more specifically a job that has to do with either being a self-employed person or a contractor, or basically, especially for a lot of people that used to be on the PUA program, this is something that can potentially apply to you. You have to have essentially undergone about a 50% loss as a result of the pandemic, and then you also have to be someone who has fewer than 10 or less employees, which, assuming that almost every single person here is probably a one-person show, if you are self-employed, if you are a contractor, if you happen to have a side hustle, so maybe you have a traditional job but you also have a side hustle on the side, then this is something that can potentially apply to you, which is really great news. Now, the other 3rd qualification is actually the same thing that we mentioned in yesterday's video, which is also the fact that for this one, you also have to have been someone that is currently living or has an address that is in a low-income neighborhood or area. Now, just mention as before is that I'll probably put the website to where you can find more information in the description, but within that website, there is a tab where you can essentially enter in your zip code and see whether or not you happen to live in a particularly low-income area. And I think also you'd be actually very surprised, because there are many neighborhoods. Like, I can give you, for example, in my case, I'm in Brooklyn, New York. I'm in a relatively more humble middle-class area, and interestingly, my zip code, thankfully and gratefully, actually is in the region that they consider as low income. So what this really means is that you don't have to, as mentioned, be someone that is currently living in like a very hooded, a dangerous area, a housing project. Of course, if you already are there, then it means that you probably very, very much do qualify for this requirement at least, and should definitely look into this program, especially because the due date, as mentioned, is actually the very end of this year. So there's still literally about 2 to 3 weeks left. So definitely something to maybe hustle and rush into. Now, a couple questions that I really saw that I really want to clarify, I think, is that one of the very common questions is that if you started a business last year, for example, whether or not you'd be able to qualify for this. And the answer to this is that in order to be able to get onto this program, because the purpose of this program was really to be able to offer a grant to keep a lot of past businesses alive, and actually because when you do the actual physical application, especially for this specific part, because again, as we mentioned in yesterday's video, again, definitely check that out, is that there will be a section within the application where you have to essentially input the amount of money that you made from this particular business, or in probably most people's case here, a self-employed job before the pandemic, and then the amount of money that you made during or even after the pandemic. So what this essentially means is that you have to have been someone that was running that particular job, working that particular job, that business, or that side hustle before the pandemic even started, because it's really helped to keep them alive. Now, with that being said, is that if you are someone that, say for example, you started a whole brand new business, I definitely would say that it may be still worth it to look into, really, because I don't know if they're still, doing this. It's really because this was a program that actually is still technically going on, but they were doing it at a very, very limited supply. But essentially, earlier this year, when they first approved the third stimulus, actually technically when they approved the first and the second stimulus package, but in our case with the third stimulus package, they did something back then where essentially if you tried to apply for the EIDL program, even if you ended up being denied, essentially every single person, they gave you about a $1,000 stimulus check / grant in order to kind of start off or help your business while the application was rolling. And this is something that actually about 90% of the people that applied got it. So this is a very, very high probability. Now, the big thing is that this was a program that was run on a very, very limited supply. So it was pretty much going to go on until they run out of money. I don't know the current situation. There is not a lot of news about this particular program, which is probably great if you happen to be here so we can hopefully share some more information about it. But it's definitely something to look into. And because I think at the end of the day, regardless, now, hopefully we're able to get approved for it, but regardless of whether or not we do or maybe struggle with it, at the end of the day, they will probably send you a letter that maybe lets you know why they came to the result that they came to the result. And I think at the end of the day, if this really is something that can maybe potentially, put money in our pockets, it's definitely at least worth taking a chance at, because at least hopefully there'll be some chance or hope that maybe some, especially if we're talking about $5,000 to $15,000, that's a lot of money that can potentially help a lot of people. And then probably the last common question I do also know that many people asked is about when you're submitting the application, whether or not you have to submit it 3 times if you're trying to get all 3 or attempt to get all 3 programs. And the answer to that question is that in order to be able to get onto this, you have to first submit an application for the general EIDL program. That's the one that we talked about in yesterday's video, which once again will be at the end screen. However, once you submit that application, they will probably send you an email or an invite or a link so that you can apply for the second and the third program that we're talking about in today. So the great news is that once you complete the first application, in order to get onto the second or to try to get onto the second or third program, they are both one application. So the great news is that you don't have to complete 2 separate applications for that. It's one application, you can finish it, and then they'll let you know what they end up deciding. And maybe a big thing to share is that it's also very, very possible that because each of these programs happen to be separate from each other, it's very possible that you can actually technically qualify for all of these programs. So it's very, very possible that you can get some money from the first program, the second program, and the third program, and literally get money 3 times as a result of all of this. So with that being said, that's what I really just wanted to cover in today's update. Now, if there are maybe any other kinds of questions, feel free to comment them below. But I do know is that also if you were to glance at the website, which I will probably put in a link down below, there's a tab and page within that website that actually has the contact information to contact the SBA if you guys have any particular questions about the program, about honestly just anything at all. The only thing is that there's just many different numbers depending on the specific kind of SBA program. So there's a number for the PPP, there's a number for the EIDL, there's a number for like large businesses, like a little bit of everything. So definitely check that out. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching. As always, stay safe, stay well, and hope to see you guys next time. And also happy holidays. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching again.